Got it.
So, Jake, what's the food situation?
The food situation, yeah, next month. Robert, have you received the check from Our Revolution Maryland for?
Yeah.
Got it, yes. Well, the check is in the mail, and so, sorry, you'll have to wait this month's synod. But
I'll get something.
yes, but no, we'll thank you, everybody, both in person and online for being here. I'm sure a couple other people might filter in as we as time goes on here. But we can go ahead and get started with the general business portion of the meeting in the meantime, and we're also joined we've got a Zoom audience here as well. Just want to remind folks that we have hybrid meetings. Definitely in-person attendance is strongly encouraged, but yes, we do have a virtual option as well. So thank you for everybody attending both in person and virtually here. So without any further ado, so we got an agenda here, just going to go over some general business stuff, committee updates, before we get to the heart of the meeting, which is to hear from our guest speakers, one of whom is here, McKayla Wilkes from Schools Not Jails, and then Carlos Childs as well, who will be joining us to talk about juvenile justice and criminal justice reform in general, and as well as here in Howard County in Maryland. And so yes, moving on here. We do have some general ground rules at our meetings. This is particular for people on mute. If you're not talking, please just stay on mute so it doesn't pick up any background noise. If you have something to say during the general meeting, that's fine. Just use the hand raise portion. Same with people in the audience. If you have something you want to say, definitely feel free to comment but just raise your hand to let us know. We will be doing a Q&A portion at the end of the meeting after we hear from McKayla and Carlos. But for that portion, please just try to keep your question/comment to 1 minute or less so that we don't run over time and others also have time to say their piece. And then of course, as always, be respectful. We usually like to go ahead and for people who this is their first meeting, give them a chance to sort of introduce themselves, things like who they are, where you live, how you heard about Our Revolution Howard County, what you're interested in, why you decided to come, or anything else you think might be worth sharing. And so we can start with our in-person meeting attendance. We could save McKayla's intro for later, but I know Delilah, I know you, but if it's good to see you. But yeah, if you want to, and people don't have to, if you don't want to introduce yourself, you don't have to. And we're gonna give the people on Zoom an opportunity as well, but we'll start in person. So if you want to, introduce yourself.
Speak.
City.
If you could speak up a little.
I just graduated from Towson University. I was doing some organizing there with the Young Democratic Socialist chapter. I was actually the chairperson of that chapter. But yeah, I'm back in Ellicott City now and graduated, so that's why I wanted to come to this meeting today. And how I heard about this group, obviously it's a local group, but through like we had some joint events with Our Revolution, some like coalition work when I was at Thompson, like protests and things like that. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here, and congratulations on I actually didn't realize you were graduated, so good to know you're back in Howard County. So we'll get you plugged into. We got a few different avenues here. Yeah, so okay, I'm not sure if your guests want to you can introduce yourself. You don't have to if you'd like. Yeah, if friend of McKayla. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Assume maybe you came from Charles County, so I know it's a bit of a drive. My girlfriend lives in Waldorf now, so I'd make that commute quite. It is a lot. So thank you all for being here. And others are regular members or steering committee members for those who are here in person, although, hello, you're here for the juvenile crime discussion. Awesome, you've come just in time. We're actually doing, feel free to sign in over there if you'd like. But before you sign in, actually, we're doing introductions for people if this is their first time, coming to a meeting. So my name's Jake. I'm the co-chair of the group. You don't have to introduce yourself if you don't want, but if you want to say, who you are, where you live, how you heard about this meeting, sort of what brought you here, you're certainly welcome to.
Hey, my name is Brent Childs, and I'm interested in this because I have a teenager who driving plays right now. Very concerned about him, and I found information about this meeting on one of my Facebook feeds.
Got it. Well, you don't have to answer if you know, is your child like high school age?
Middle school.
Middle school, okay. Well, yeah, no, certainly, that's kind of, youth is who we're talking about. So yeah, thank you for being here. Certainly relevant discussion. And yeah, feel free to not sorry to ambush you on your way in. But yeah, so and for those on Zoom, if you had trouble hearing, just know next month we are going to have we got approval from our state organization to get fancier tech equipment, so we'll have a nice microphone setup, speaker setup, so that hopefully you can hear the people in the audience a little bit easier. But that's also why we encourage in-person attendance. So with that being said, we can go ahead and give those who are new on Zoom an opportunity to introduce yourself. Alex, we've heard from you before, but Madeline, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi there. Yeah, I go by Maddie. But yeah, this is my first meeting. I live in the area I graduated from high school, but I also actually was in the YDSA with Delilah, who just introduced herself. And I'm still at Towson right now. But I live in Howard County. I have siblings in the area. And yeah, just looking to learn more about the group and what you guys do.
Awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't want to answer, feel free. How many more semesters do you have?
Oh, it'll be 3 or 4.
Okay, awesome. Well, do some good organizing work there with keep the YDSA strong. But thank you for Delilah helping spread the word. Majid, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. I don't know how I found out about this. I mean, I got an email and just trying to get more involved in the community. I actually live in Montgomery County, but I just wanted to see what things your group has going on.
Got it. And Manesh, I know you from back in the day with Progressive Dems of Howard County meetings, but if you would like to introduce yourself, the group, feel free.
Sure. My name is Manesh. I actually worked for Howard County government for 15 years. But then I left 4 years ago. I actually work for Montgomery County now. And I've always felt that when it was Progressive Democrats or, our revolution, I've always felt that, there are very interesting topics that are brought up in these meetings. And when I have time, it's always nice to, listen in. I haven't been able to come to as many meetings as I used to because I teach at UMBC in the evenings, and my class is always during your meetings. So we have a couple of weeks before the semester starts. So I'm really interested to hear today's topic.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Good to see you again. And Olivia, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Olivia Spicassi. I am with the ACLU of Maryland on the policy team. I'm here for Sebastian Brown, who's one of our organizers on the engagement team. And I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Olivia. Yeah, definitely tell Sebastian we said hello. He gave a really great teach-in with Nick on Know Your Rights presentation for us a few months ago. So thank you for being here.
Of course.
So I don't want to butcher this pronunciation, but Omo Demola. I don't know if I got that right. Please feel free to correct me.
Oh, hi, hey there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you got that correct.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ahmad Williams. I'm with the Montgomery County Racial Equity Network, the MORE Network. I'm the organizer there. I reside in Montgomery County, and I'm in a lot of spaces. I wear a lot of hats. With Decrim MoCo, and I saw a flyer, and I always want to know more about our neighbors that's organizing and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. And then last but definitely not least, Susan, good to see you.
Hi, Jake. So I'm Susan Karen. I also live in Montgomery County. I'm with Peace Action Montgomery. But really, my interest in this topic is I'm also with our county's Mental Health Advisory Commission, and we are looking at sort of the rising trend of chronic absenteeism, which is also a problem in Baltimore and other places. We're trying to look at a non-law enforcement way of dealing with that. And I was a little concerned because this morning I heard Delegate Carl Simmons talk about chronic absenteeism and about how increasing law enforcement might help with that. So I don't want to see that kind of response.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you, Susan. Yes, very active organizer in Montgomery County on this and a lot of other issues. So thank you for being with us tonight. So yeah, that's it for introductions. As far as our, again, we've got others here who as well who are either regular members or steering committee members. And there's nobody new worth doing introductions with. But just a small update is we had one vacancy on our steering committee. It has now been filled by the new youngest member of the board, Iman Sharifi. He is going to be joining us on Zoom tonight. Unfortunately, he's not on right now, but if he gets on, he can introduce himself if he wants. But he's going to be running our social media, and he's been doing a good job doing that so far. And that sounds like the word got out about this meeting, for example. So it's good to have him on board. We appreciate his work. So yeah, we're now fully staffed here. So moving on. Treasurer's report. Francis here, our treasurer. And same amount in the bank account.
Yeah, we've had just a few small expenditures. And we are, let's see, I ordered the trade name from Maryland.
Okay.
That's going to take a couple weeks to get approved. And then in theory, fingers crossed, we will have all the information we need this time. They've gone back and forth with us 3 times now, but
yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So as people can see, we've got a little over $1,600 for the county organization, but we've been having some issues establishing an organizational bank account so that we don't have to keep it in a personal bank account. So we are hopefully soon done with that. And again, we've got some expenditures coming from the state organization so that we can promote our monthly meetings on social media for social media advertising, and also have food at our events. And then we will also be purchasing the tech equipment. Hopefully we'll have all of that starting next month. And the check, at least for the food and the social media, should be in the mail on the way to Robert. So thank you all for the patience. And yeah, now moving on to just the committee updates before we, again, move on to the juvenile justice discussion. This is just to give people an idea of, what are some things that Our Revolution works on between the monthly meetings, because there is quite a bit. And so one thing, Kat, I had asked Kat to do this, but she, my co-chair, she wasn't feeling well tonight, so she couldn't be there. But Francis, if you could maybe do a timer for keep us to 3 minutes each for these committee updates,
Yes.
because you know, I can drone on. But yeah, so yes, Malik can attest to that. But yeah, so the most recent, big issue that we've gotten into is there's a big corporation called WR Grace. It's actually active internationally all over the world, but it happens to be headquartered in Colombia. I had never heard of it until very recently, but there's actually been movies made about them because they've poisoned entire towns in Massachusetts and in Montana. And so there's a John Travolta movie in the 1990s called A Civil Action made about it, if people are interested. But they are headquartered here in Colombia, and they just filed for a very controversial permit for something called chemical recycling. They try to call it plastics recycling, but yeah, chemical recycling or pyrolysis is a scientific term. It's essentially incinerating plastics to convert it to energy. Very controversial practice because of the health effects of what, the chemicals that it puts into the environment not being safe and potentially causing cancer and other serious ailments. And so this corporation just filed for this permit next to River Hill community and another community called Cedar Creek on land that WR Grace had just sold to have this community be developed. And now they're filing to have this very dangerous, yes, thank you, very dangerous and controversial practice be done. And so community members are rising up. There's a public comment period to the Maryland Department of Environment. Our Revolution Howard County submitted a public comment. Community members filed a zoning complaint. Department of Planning and Zoning ruled against the community members, but they've appealed that ruling, and there's going to be a hearing on it on February 19th. Community members also filed a zoning regulation amendment to create an 1,800-foot buffer between their homes and these harmful activities, which the planning board recommended in favor of 3-0, but they also said even if that zoning regulation amendment gets passed by the county council, it would not apply to this project, and so separate legislation would be needed. And so we've been working with Delegate Jen Tarasa on potential local and state clean air legislation to help stop this project. And then community members held a town hall meeting on December 3rd. 2 out of 5 council members already pledged their support for the community members' cause to stop this project, so they only need one more vote. And Councilmember Opal Jones was there and was asked point blank to his face if he would vote with the community members, and he refused to commit to doing that, unfortunately. And so we still need that third vote, either from him, Councilmember Christiana Rigby, or Councilman David Youngman. And so we'll be mobilizing community members to testify on these state and local bills soon. And so if people are interested, we're having weekly planning calls every Monday at 6:30 p.m. So please let me know. And yeah, we've helped them get news coverage a few times for this call. And so hopefully the attention has an effect. But that's enough from me. We'll hand it off to Malik here for the Palestinian International Solidarity Committee updates.
Thank you, Jake. Hi, guys. Name's Malik. So, our revolution with Howard County for Free Palestine does events in solidarity with Palestine, because as we know, there is a genocide happening there. And last month, and so a few events that we've done are the Poetry for Palestine at Busboys and Poets, which we have about 100 people show up, and it was a phenomenal event. Not only did we have people who RSVP, but we also had people who were at the restaurant that we were at. Noticed that there's a from Palestinian event happening. They joined us, many of them Palestinians as well. It was a really phenomenal night. I believe I put the wrong dates on here, but we have Howard County, we have Human Rights Commission and Board of Education public testimonies that we do every month that we can. This is an ongoing event, and so far, we testified at the HRC and the Board of Education, and upcoming events that we're having are a teaching with Dr. Orsabi Burton on the 30th. We're gonna have Board of Ed public testimonies, and on February 6th, 2025, we're gonna have a Pan-African community action event as well. These are events that we do every month. We have multiple events. We have a strong showing, and I think this is a very clear sign that in Howard County, there's still a very strong solidarity with Palestine. And yeah, with that being said, I will pass well, this is a picture that we took of the poetry event, and I think it goes to show just how packed the room was. But yeah, we'll update you guys about future events if you sign up in our sign up sheet as well. That being said, we're going to talk about the rent stabilization efforts, which is your take away.
Thank you, Malik. Yep, and then also gearing up for both state and local divestment efforts. At the ones at the state level, Susan here on Zoom has been really leading the charge on with the divesting from the Maryland Israel Development Center. And so please keep up with us on that and let us know if you want to get more involved. But yeah, so on to the tenant organizing effort. So as Malik said, it's officially under the banner of the Howard County Rent Stabilization Coalition, a coalition of many organizations, including Our Revolution Howard County, but we were an original member and spent much of not even 2023, but I guess it was spent much of 2023 mobilizing to build this coalition, get a rent stabilization bill introduced. We did get that bill introduced, but then it unfortunately failed last January. And so ever since then, we pivoted to trying to get tenants elected to local office, particularly on the Columbia Association Board, as well as forming tenant unions, because that had never been done in Howard County, although a 2018 county law was passed allowing tenants to create tenant unions. And so we got a tenant elected who we had met through our rent stabilization efforts. Paulette Pettiford Thomas, got her elected to Oakland Mills Village Board, worked with her to create the first ever tenant committee in any village board to our knowledge. And then from there, we start our efforts to build a tenant union. There are a lot of bumps along the way. I won't go into detail there, but I'll just say that I'm happy to announce as of last month, the tenants at Columbia Point in Oakland Mills have officially become the first tenants in Howard County to ever form a tenant union. And so we got the tenants got they held their official leadership elections, which was the last requirement under the law to be able to call themselves a tenant union and take advantage of the tenant protections that come with that. And so that was on December 17th, and we reached out to the news, and it's definitely a newsworthy event. And so we got coverage. There's our leader there, Kevin Judy from the Baltimore Party for Socialism and Liberation, and he's a tenant at Columbia Point. And so but the work's not done just because we formed a tenant union. The tenant unions are really just a means to an end to actually get impactful change for the tenants. And so, whole reason rent stabilization failed is we did not have enough tenant power. And so part of the purpose of building tenant unions is to build that tenant power so we can get something like rent stabilization passed. And so just one tenant union is not going to be enough. We now need to build other tenant unions. Now that we've shown it's possible, it's been publicized, we need to replicate this model and mobilize tenants all across the county. And so I'm actually going to try to attempt to create a tenant union at my apartment complex in Columbia Glade and Dorsey Search. And so if there are any tenants either, online or in person here and, interested, in either forming a tenant union where you live or helping, even if you're not a tenant, you want to help us do that, please let us know. We have coalition calls every Thursday at 7 p.m. You should go back.
Yeah, one more. One slight correction I want to make, for the Board of Education testimonies on the 16th. Those are supposed to be on the other column,
Oh, okay.
but if anyone here is interested in testifying for the upcoming testimonies, please let us know. We'll help set up that for you guys. That's all. Thank you.
Cool. Yes, thank you, Malik. Yeah, okay, so moving on, last committee update, and then it's the main event later. Yep. Okay, so this is the Columbia Association watch update. Columbia Association, closest thing we have to a city council here in Howard County. And so normally it is my co-chair Kat who gives the updates for this committee because she's been very involved with the Columbia Association. She lives in Wild Lake, her and Francis, and Francis ran 2 years ago, and then Kat ran following year. Kat came very close, only was 17 votes away from winning. And so I'm hoping she runs again this cycle. There's a chance I run in my village in Dorsey Search, and would encourage other people to also consider. This is a rare race, even though it's not officially a city council. Again, it's very close. It's a rare race where you can win with 1 to 200 votes in a lot of places. And so these are winnable races for, the left, the grassroots. And so I encourage people to take advantage of those opportunities and, get in touch with myself or Kat or anybody else if you are interested in not only running, but also just helping support other grassroots candidates to run. And so, Kat has some more substantive updates on, what's actually been happening at the CA. There's been some budget discussions, arguments about should they make the pool and gym memberships free, as a, point of equity. Does the CA assessment fee, which is basically like the tax you pay to the CA to be a part of it, should that be raised on residents to help pay for more things? And Kat also has a Substack. So if you want to get the more nitty-gritty details, again, Kat's been following it much more closely than I have. Yeah, those are, a sample of the committees. We have some other ones that are not as active: Union Solidarity, Anti-Moms for Liberty, some other committees we'd like to get off the ground: State Legislation and Issues Committee. And so if people are interested, we have a Google form to sign up if you're interested. I just put that in the Zoom chat. So moving on from there, please feel free to scan the QR code if you want to join our email list, join a committee, follow us on social media, etc. We've also got a link tree. That's where the QR code takes you to. As I meant, in terms of what else we've been up to, we have back on social media with Iman. Robert, our secretary here, just submitted potential response op-ed about the $140 million lakefront library boondoggle that the Howard Hughes Corporation is trying to pull. And again, we'll have the tech equipment and the food social media advertising budget for next month. Now that we have social media taken care of, that was a big weight off our shoulders. Next, if anybody has some web design skills and would be willing to offer their services to help a more fancy presentation of a lot of the stuff that we're working on from a month-to-month basis, that would be helpful. Also volunteering, tabling at public events, helping on our steering committee plan social events. In terms of upcoming events, and this is also related to, and this is the very last thing before the main event, but upcoming events, this is also related to the CA meeting. So there's the teach-in with Dr. Orasami Burton on prison reform that Malik shared in the Palestine event. There's also a big anti-Trump rally in DC on January 20th, MLK Day at 11 a.m. Aman and I will be carpooling if anybody's interested in joining us. And then again, I mentioned the Columbia Association elections. If people don't really know much about it, but want to know more about it or want to, interested in even just helping volunteer for a grassroots candidate, we'll be having 2 interest meetings about that at the public libraries, one on Sunday, January 26th at 1:30 p.m. at the East Columbia Branch Library, one on Saturday, February 1st in the Howard County Central Branch Library. And so strongly encourage people who are curious about that. If you're on the fence about running as a candidate, you might want to help, please come to preferably the first meeting, but if you can't make that second meeting. We have a teach-in on Pan-Africanism by the Pan-African Community Action or PAC on February 6th at the Central Branch Library, and then our next monthly meeting Monday, February 10th at the same library, and that's going to be on Columbia founder Jim Rouse and really examining his legacy. It's going to be our topic for Black History Month, and so we will send more information about that. But yeah, so without any further ado, we can move on to, thank you for your patience, everybody. Move on to the main topic of the evening, which is
Oh, wait.
oh, I'm sorry.
There's the link that's on, I have a friend who I told about this and they said something they're trying to link, so it's the link for the Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I got the email,
Uh-huh.
to remind me, and I got it kind of certain notes, I forgot. And I
Uh-huh.
sent it to a few people, but they couldn't make it.
Mhm.
She had texted me just now, said the link, so is the link, the one that was, I guess it's on the message at the bottom.
Yeah, on like the RSVP page,
Okay,
it
that's
should.
what I
Are they
thought.
saying it's not working?
No, wait, I'm just checking.
Oh,
it now
okay.
real quick, 'cause she said that she was trying, we were talking a few minutes ago.
Okay. Yeah, if
And the one that register, it says register or something on
yeah,
it?
it does require.
PCAP.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, let me tell her to print it, okay,
yeah,
sorry. but
cool.
I
Yeah,
just
no
wanted
worries,
to-
no worries. No, I'm glad. Thank you for helping recruit people.
Always good to have more
Yeah, I
people
tried to
coming in.
forward it to a few people, but
Yeah.
kind of for notice because I forgot about it.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, if
Okay.
they're, if they're coming for this discussion, they're joining at the right time. So, but thank you for that. So yeah, just to so to kind of officially transition now into the main draw of the night. We can have our guest speakers, McKayla and Carlos, come sit up
Over
here and out.
McKayla.
Yeah,
Over
sorry.
here, the microphone's over
The
here.
the microphone is the laptop, so yeah, if you two don't mind sitting there for me. And then thank you both for joining us. Before we officially get started with that and have you both introduce yourselves, just want to give a little bit of context of like why we decided to have this topic now of all times. And so first off, just nationally, I would say based on what I'm seeing in the news, the rhetoric even among like other so-called leftist news outlets and stuff like that, I am seeing what I'll describe as a lot of tough on crime rhetoric, and say we're in a tough on crime frenzy nationally, and so that's on the one hand, and then on the other hand here in Howard County, that has also touched our county specifically. And that's what's kind of scary about this stuff is it only takes one incident to cause this frenzy. It's not necessarily based on like statistical trends. Can be just one anecdotal incident. And so we've kind of had such an incident, especially those in Howard County probably heard about it, but probably those not in Howard County didn't hear about it. But basically, at the high school I went to, Howard High School, there was a student there, 17-year-old. Who got arrested during school. I think cops went in and arrested him during school, and they searched him in the school, and they found a gun on him, and he had an ankle monitor on because he had already been a suspect for attempted murder, and he was in the Anne Arundel County public school system, and then he was transferred into the Howard County public school system. And so this was a big news story, probably because he had a gun on him in school. It was in the news. And, the school system's response was, well, when he was transferred to us from Anne Arundel County Public School System, we didn't know that he had this criminal record. It was never communicated to us. And that was the school's, sort of official response, and that change has since been made. I think at the state level now, county, when a student is transferred from one school system to the next within Maryland, now the school systems are required to inform the receiving school system if the student has any sort of criminal record like that. But still, that has not satisfied a lot of people. Again, this was one single incident, but when it hit the news, and it's hard to say how widespread this is because I haven't seen a poll or anything like that. But there's always, I like to think maybe it's just a vocal minority, but again, it's hard to say. But at least on the social media, some of the social media pages, there's been this, this tough on crime rhetoric that we were talking about nationally, saying, what's happening to Howard County, what's happening in the schools, what's happening with the youth, things aren't safe. And there's been this sort of call for this tough on crime response, even again with that change already being made at the state level requiring the better communication, that has not been enough. And so there's been pressure on the school system to do, I would say, tough on crime reforms to the point where the school system has created this student and safety advisory work group. I'm not sure if they've selected their members. They had a public application process. They definitely haven't put out reforms yet, but I imagine over the next few months they will be. They have not already selected members. They will select these members, call these meetings. There will probably be public input opportunities, and then they would deliberate and come up with reforms for the school system, but to potentially implement. And I imagine the tough on crime folks will really be coming out in full force. And so we wanted to kind of give an alternative viewpoint of how crime in general, but also youth crime especially, can be viewed, conceptualized, and responded and addressed to, maybe aside from this tough on crime approach, and also what might be wrong with that. And so without any further ado, we have two very qualified speakers on the topic. I'll say their names, but let them give a more full introduction of themselves. But that is McKayla Wilkes and Carlos Childs from Schools Not Jails. And so without any further ado, I'll let each of you give an introduction if you want to share, who you are, what Schools Not Jails is about, and what is your connection to this issue. We start with you, McKayla.
Oh, okay. Hey, well, my name is McKayla, and Carlos and I helped to co-found Schools Not Jails, and it's basically an organization that works towards dismantling the school to prison pipeline. And so how it came about was Carlos and I met. I ran for Congress back in 2020. That's where we met. And a part of the reason I ran for Congress was because I survived the school to prison pipeline. So basically for my whole high school career, I was in and out of juvenile detention facilities, and I was placed in group homes, and just wasn't given the resources that I needed. And so although we didn't win our race in 2020, we wanted to kind of do something to keep the momentum going, to keep the movement going. And we still wanted to support the cause to dismantling the school to prison pipeline so that people wouldn't experience what I went through. And so that's how we created Schools Not Jails, and we've been doing that work on the ground as far as trying to help people get resources. I also work with an organization called Life After Release, which we do work around abolition. And one of the things that we do as a part of Life After Release is court support and court watching, which we also do court support for youth who are caught in the juvenile legal system. Yeah, we just try to help people to navigate that. So that's the kind of work that we do at Schools Not Jails, and why it was created, and why we do the work. Carlos?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, my name is Carlos Childs. Also with Schools Not Jails, previously with the ACLU of Maryland, doing a lot of work around legal justice, and actually with McKayla, making sure that just because a child has a previous incarceration or just being a child and going through regular things, that they're not held back, or they are not targeted as saying, oh, okay, we need to charge you like we charge adults, and knowing that children are children, and it's going to take a multitude of services to be able to help whatever they're like dealing with, and that a lot of crime isn't from just people want to go out and be bad. The majority of people want to go out live their life, be left alone, and not deal with nothing. But it's because of these economic issues that people do lash out, and people do have these other problems that go on that lead them down to the school to prison pipeline as well. So I'm really thanks Jake,
Yes.
thanks Our Revolution, thanks
Well,
glad to
thank
be
you,
here.
thank you both for being here. And so this is a question to either / both of you, because you both mentioned it. You mentioned this term, school to prison pipeline. So what do you mean by that? What is the school to prison pipeline?
You can
You
go
go
ahead.
first.
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay, I got you. So, for me, what the school to prison pipeline is, it's a system that's set up for children who either it's not even just when you go to school. The system can be set up before you even go to school by the incarceration of people's parents as well. That fast tracks you from school and just youth straight to the prison industrial complex by incarcerating people's parents, so that children have to grow up, whether it is in foster care, whether it is in working class communities, which are more kind of targeted by having more police in their areas, whether it's having police within the schools who are not there as a school resource, as they try to frame it. It's more they're there to police students. They are the police there to say, hey, let me target who I think is probably going to be a future quote unquote criminal, so that we can go ahead and fast track them on to a prison lifestyle as well. And I'll let McKayla give probably much better.
Well, I think you did a good job explaining it, but I guess to me, the school to prison pipeline is any circumstance or anything that pulls the child away from school or away from just being a youth into the prison industrial complex. And so that's what the school to prison pipelines for me is, literally funneling children into the carceral system on top of the trauma that they probably already are experiencing.
Well, yeah, thank you both for, defining that, sort of core term to this concept. And so you described, what it is. It is that, as the name suggests, pipeline from just, schools for children to, prisons, what's supposed to be for adults. But, a lot of times they do send kids there. For example, the 17-year-old at Howard High School is being tried as an adult. And so you've described what it is, but I would ask, like, why is, so how is this harm, I imagine, proponents of these things, whether they use the school to prison pipeline terminology or not, they would probably say, well, this is, if they're advocating for it, clearly they think it's beneficial. And so why would you say, the school to prison pipeline approach, why is this harmful? And McKayla, you said that you've been, sort of a victim of, so feel free to share, if it's, impacted you in a negative way.
Yeah, so for me, it benefited me in no kind of way. I didn't learn any kind of special lesson. I didn't say, well, okay, well, they locked me up today, I'm not going to skip school again tomorrow. I just kept doing it, because at the end of the day, we have to learn how to tackle root causes. And what we have learned, and what we do have statistics on, like how Jake put it so well earlier, that people are saying we need to be more tough on crime, and there's no really data to suggest, they're kind of just taking these one incidents and saying, okay, this is the issue. But what we do know, and what we can prove from data, is that being tough on crime doesn't reduce crime. It may deter it. Maybe you might have a school police officer at school, you might not fight at school, maybe you'll fight after school. You know what I'm saying? So to me, I would say being tough on crime doesn't tackle those root causes. It doesn't tackle the trauma. And a lot of the times, if the quote unquote crime, because I think, to me, crime is not real, it's manufactured, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, and if their quote unquote crime like involves another person, oftentimes people say, well, they have to learn their lesson, that there needs to be justice, but really the only justice is to repair that harm. Incarcerating children is not repairing harm. It's only causing more trauma. It's only creating a bigger cycle and adding on to whatever the child is already going through. And so I think that even in this instance, with this child who was incarcerated in Howard County, and who was already probably very traumatized, being accused of murder, not knowing what their fate is going to be, being charged as an adult, and then on top of that, catching another charge with this firearm at school. It's instances like that where you have the opportunity to ask questions. You have the opportunity to see, why did you feel the need to bring that gun to school? I can't imagine what kind of trauma that child is going through to be in that kind of circumstance and to feel like you have to take a gun with you to school. I can only imagine the type of fear that child feels. But it's just being able to get down to the bottom root of why. I know for me, I was incarcerated for skipping school, running away from home. I did not commit a crime. The things that I were incarcerated for were what they call status offenses, which basically it means you didn't necessarily break a law, but it's just saying that what you were doing, you were underage. Like, you're obligated to go to school, you can't skip school. And in my situation, I don't know why it made sense to them to say, okay, well, you skip school, so now we're gonna lock you up and make you miss more school. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And even to this day, I'm still getting diagnosed with mental health issues that I never knew that I had. And it wasn't until the very last year of my high school career that I found out that I had clinical depression. And it was just like, if this were discovered sooner, maybe if somebody thought to ask me, what's going on, or tried to offer me more resources other than incarceration, maybe my time in youth jail would not have happened, because I would have had the resources. I would have been able to process what I was going through. I would have been able to use the resources to not feel like I had to skip school or run away from home or do any of the things that I was doing. So it didn't really tackle the root causes for me. So yeah, that's my answer.
Can I say something?
Mhm.
I'm not sure how my voice carries.
Yeah.
I'll make my voice pretty loud. Was Carlos, he see me up here itching. Well, I'm definitely gonna do with y'all after this. I'm from Pennsylvania, a retired military in this area, so I still help a lot of people in my hometown of Pennsylvania, because exactly what we're talking about, the school to prison pipeline is alive and well. And I have a relative, I'll tell you about this story offline, that I dealt with it from the school, from kindergarten all the way through. He ended up graduating out of the prison system, but a lot of stuff happened in between. But when you talk about the definition of the school to prison pipeline, what I think about it is everything you said, plus when schools start to focus on the behavior and not the education. So a lot of the kids that are in the school to prison pipeline also are identified with IEPs and special education. So on top of it, it's not just like, say, a straight A kid that might have just went out and did something or whatever. A lot of them already have identified special needs. So if they're already identified, then why wouldn't you dig deeper? Everything y'all are saying, the words you use with trauma, or trying to find the root cause or the issue. So it's known that kids already have these definitions, and sometimes they're overused. Like you said, like opposition of defiant, overused, especially to Black and brown children. So that's a whole nother thing. So again, back to the definition of it for me was the school to prison pipeline. How the school is the deep thing is things like that start in the school system, not outside. And usually a lot of those kids end up with outside charges eventually, because the schools who identified a lot of behavioral or certain things don't address things that are written under faith and under all the things required by law, and don't provide the proper resources, all the same words, trauma, that is not identified, from the parents to the generational things that have happened. And what I find is, again, even though I live in Howard County, got 2 kids, one's an adult that graduated, another one that's in high school now, I still help a lot in my hometown because they don't speak up. And I'm very vocal, and here I really haven't been as involved, but I have a few that say, okay, I'll help if you need me, because I'm familiar with IEPs, I'm familiar with this, mental health is my background from the military. So I have certain things that I would just like to fight, I guess, for the right reasons. But that is very, important. And what you said earlier about the reasoning why you ended up in the system, like I said, you didn't commit a crime. But again, it's not like that behavior of not going to school led to them not really focusing on your education, and you not getting the classroom work or getting what you really need, in it. So for me, the definition is everything we talked about and a little bit more of how the school, how is the school responsible? What I just said, the school stops being a school, or the school partners with probations officers and police. And again, that's a whole nother story about SROs and things like that. I'm not the one that said they don't have to be in there. I know some people definitely say no. But again, there are some positive mentor SROs in it, even though I know some people are like all or nothing. So, but I'm being honest, as a Black woman, I always say, well, if the right ones are there, that are the mentors and truly get why they're there, and they're there to be a police, but they're also there to be that de-escalator before it gets to a level of a charge. And a lot of situations in schools, to me, could be de-escalated by staff or even the SROs who are put in those positions. So that's it, and I'm gonna try not to talk until the end, but I
No.
have to get that out of my system.
I
This is very passionate to me.
I
And
appreciate.
IEPs and special education is as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And that's actually, we always have a list of topics
Yeah.
that we want to get to in future months, and IEPs have been on that list for a long time because I understand that there's quite a few problems with the IEP program. And so thank you for, being here and sharing I think you weren't here when we did introductions, but real quick, what was your name? You don't have to
Well, my
share.
name is Arden. I'm
Art.
local. I don't
You-
care.
you-
Arden. I've been
yeah.
here one of these
You
one
you
time
came,
before.
I remember,
Yeah.
I recognize you.
Yes,
Yes,
uh-huh.
yes. Well, welcome back. Good to
Thank
see you
you.
again.
Yep.
And feel free to,
Yeah, I'm actually touching on that.
Mhm.
Where for me, the whole thing about going to the root causes is for a lot of people, they view that as okay, that's a long-term thing. Or a lot of people actually don't even want to deal with the root causes. They feel like, oh, well, the police is real quick. We can just have a response. I feel immediately better that I see the child get dragged away. Okay, problem solved. Yeah, but they're not realizing that all you're doing is maybe even for that instance, making things a slight bit better because now that child is removed. But what happens when that child comes back? Is there anyone saying, hey, how are we going to make it so this child doesn't have these same problems again if they come back? What do we do? What does that say to the other people in the community who are saying, oh, okay, well, it seems like no one's going to help us with the actual issues that we're going through with whether we can't make rent, we can't pay for food, we don't have anyone at home helping us with our schooling, or frankly, that you're getting abused at home or what's going on. They look at a police officer, they look at telling or just sending people away as, oh, it's a quick fix solution. I don't have to do anything past that. But no one's looking at also, are we well funding our education system? Because a lot of times we're real quick to say, okay, we need more police officers because crime is going up. We need more people in jail, but no one says, okay, well, are we actually increasing funds to the education system? Are we increasing funds to mental health counselors? Are we increasing teachers' funds because of the stuff that they're dealing with as well? We're asking them to be not just teachers, mentors. We're asking them to go and pay to get student supplies too, but no one's actually giving them the resources to make it easier for them as well. So yeah, I love that.
Yes.
So that just
Mhm.
for mentioning Pennsylvania, reminding me of Biden just commuted the sentence of that federal judge that was sentencing children to prison.
Yeah.
Like one of the kids' sentence was like literally mocked the assistant principal on MySpace and got sent to jail
Oh my God.
in return for
Priorities
cash.
are
That's
horrible.
Private prison.
that's on brand for Biden because he championed the 94 crime bill, which increased the funding for SROs. Yes, which increased the funding for SROs and also increased mass incarceration for youth. So that's on brand.
I mean, like how much of this do you think is just systemic? Like those prisons need to be
Yeah.
built.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely
Money
systemic
needs to
from
be made.
thank you. It's someone like for the people who own the prisons, oh, to them, it's a quick crash grab. Oh, get kids. And then
Kids cost more, right? They get
Exactly.
paid more. Like
and the craziest thing to me too is like as we see because I was talking to someone who's a public defender in Prince George's County, and they were talking about the difference between parts of Montgomery County when they have sort of kid-related issues to Prince George's County, which is a predominantly Black county. Is Prince George's is real quick to tell people, okay, cool, we need an increase in police. We need to start monitoring areas. Just how there was this big news story about how National Harbor, there was a fight that happened in National Harbor. The first thing the county executive did was, oh, we need to put in a curfew in place for kids. We need to start arresting more people. No one's saying, okay, why are the kids there in the first place? Is there anywhere else for them to be? Are there safe spaces for kids if you can't go home? But in Montgomery County, you had the same kind of problems going on in Silver Spring, but you had the county council or they have the county council there invest in the community to make it more safe for kids and put more resources in there for kids. And that's the biggest problem that I've seen is that for Black and brown communities, it seems like we have turned into the ones who are saying now police us more rather than saying no, give us the resources that you give white communities, because if they see this as a resource issue, we should see that as the same way as well.
They have more diversion programs.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well, no, well, thank you. Thank you, Arden. Thank you, Sanad. Thank you both for those answers. And so, another, sort of question that I have here bouncing around a little bit is, McKayla, at a few points, earlier you were hesitant to even call it, I think, the criminal justice system. You didn't want to use that.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
Yep. And so, you didn't want to use that term, and you were saying, you didn't use the term restorative justice, but you did talk about restoring something. And so what, why are you hesitant to call our current way of doing things? Why is that not justice to you? And what is your, sort of alternative approach? And Carlos, feel free to also.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so the system that we have now was not created on the principles of justice. It was created on the principles of oppression. And it's a system that is based on legalities. And just because something is legal does not make it right. And it doesn't make it just. And so that's why I would never refer to our current system as a criminal justice system, because it's not a system that's focused on justice. And I would say, like I said earlier, I'm an abolitionist. I don't think that the current system that we have can be reformed based off of the principles in which it was founded upon. I think that it needs to be burned down. I think that we need to focus on how to repair harm versus crime. And I'll just touch on what I said earlier a little bit to try to tie it into this on why I say that crime isn't real, crime is manufactured, right? When we look at this country and what we consider crimes, right? Like earlier, it was mentioned about the genocide happening in Palestine, right? And we see every single president that we have had has bombed Black and brown countries because it's legal, but it's not right. And we have cases, and there was a case in Charles County where there was a child who was charged with assault because they sprayed air freshener in the direction of another teacher. And another child was charged with, what was it? It was like destruction of property for drawing on another child's jean jacket. So to me, crime is subjective. Crime is whatever, no shade, but crime is whatever the rich white people in power claim it to be. And so, I think we also have to, when we reimagine what safety is, we also have to be real with ourselves about this system that we have and understand that this system isn't broken, and understand that this system is doing exactly what it was created to do, exactly what it was intended to do. When you look at even just the foundation of what a police officer is, they were created because they wanted to catch enslaved Africans, right? And so all that has done is just rebranded itself, right? This is what's going to keep our community safe. We know that more police do not keep our community safe. We know that tougher laws do not keep crime down. We know that tougher laws do not keep the community safe either. Because we see it all the time. Why do we have quote unquote repeat offenders? Because sending them to jail is not helping their circumstances. You sending them to jail is not going to change the fact that they need Pampers for their baby. You sending this child to jail is not going to change the fact that when they get home, they getting their tail whooped on. You sending this child to jail is not going to change the fact that, maybe they're being bullied, and so they, become a quote unquote bully. That's not going to change anything. And so we just honestly just have to be real with ourselves and understand that the current system, the way that it is not going to trend upwards. It's not going to trend in the way that they would like for us to believe so. Like I talked about the 94 crime bill earlier. Has crime went down since the 94 crime bill was put into place? What's happened? The jails are getting fuller. They don't have room. We see COVID, and during the plight of COVID, they had to send some of the people who were incarcerated home because there were too many people there. And guess who were the people they sent home? The people who they claim to be low-level offenders, which means that, okay, they probably didn't have to be there in the first place if you can send them home. Yes.
Judges got sent home.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, but that's why I refer to the system as a criminal legal system, because it's not based on justice. It's just based on whatever they say it is. So
Yeah, and also like picking off of that, one thing you really taught me was how many people are incarcerated not because they've been found guilty of a crime. They don't have the bail money to get out. So you're really incarcerating people just because they don't have money. And that is really the majority of the people who are incarcerated. But as we look at it, we have so many people who are just push towards criminalization as being the societal answer, because a lot of people look at neighborhoods that are low income and say, you know what, I don't want to divert my precious resources to helping them. I don't want to give them the jobs that they need and actually give them the actual jobs, education, resources, what mental health treatments, drug addiction treatments that actually would help communities. It's more seen as, okay, a police is a much quicker answer. And to your point too about how we see the increase in police, but we're not seeing the same increase in safety levels. Low-income areas are policed the most. So if there was going to be some correlation between a lot of police and less crime, the low-income neighborhoods would be the safest place out. But we look at these more expensive neighborhoods, they may have one officer in a whole city and no one complains. And there are still crimes going on. It's just, are they looking for those specific crimes? And then you look at the type of crimes. When you go to more blue collar, I'm gonna call it blue collar crime, but that's not the word for it. But like things like assault, murder, things like that, we have all the resources to prosecute those people without looking at actual why they did them. But when it comes to white collar crimes, there's so much more leniency of whether you're committing tax fraud, whether you're stealing money from your employees, things like that. That's real quick to say, okay, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry that your employees got screwed over, but hey, you didn't hit someone one day.
And the fact that it's blue collar and white collar is telling.
Exactly.
So.
No, well, thank you both, for those answers there. And so, I guess another question, I have there, sort of related to comment Carlos just made about, you're saying, if more police equaled more safety, then the communities that have the most police would be safest, right? And those are, the low income communities that get the police the most. And so, my question is, Howard County is the 6th wealthiest county in the country, according to median income levels. Charles County, where you're both from originally, is the wealthiest Black majority county in the country, recently surpassing Prince George's County. And yet both counties still have, considerable levels of poverty, inequality, and crime. So what is the relationship between crime, poverty and inequality?
Yeah. So what you really get a lot of times is when you have these wealthier counties, a lot of times the wealth is hoarded in specific areas. And they do this by getting all the resources gathering up for themselves so that when you have the low income areas, there's no more resources to go. In Charles County, we're funded wholly by the county. So we don't have as many like municipalities that can fund themselves and get to their specific issues. Waldorf is the 4th largest city in the entire state of Maryland. It is a majority Black county. It's the reason that Charles County is the majority Black or the wealthiest Black county in the country. The problem is that all the resources when they come in first go to areas like La Plata, the majority white area. It goes to the more rural farmers who live there as well. We're not funding the actual areas that are having the problems. It's insane that you have in Charles County, you have this wealthy county, but we do not have rec centers at all. We do not have things like Boys and Girls Clubs. We have maybe 3 libraries in the entire county. We do not have walkable streets. We do not have any kind of outdoor activity. So if you want to go outside and play tennis, basketball, swimming, anything, you either have to know someone personally who has this, or you have to either just hope a school is open one day to allow you to do this. So when you create a situation where there's nowhere to go to enjoy yourself, people are going to start getting into things that they shouldn't get into. And the immediate response is always, okay, fine, we'll lock them up then. And it's more wealthier people who have that mindset, because to them, they know I'm not going to deal with it. And one of the most shocking things is that you see a lot of people, like you both mentioned, coming out now saying, oh, we need more police in schools. We need to do something with the kids. A lot of people who are saying that, they're thinking to themselves, it won't be my child who has to go through this. It's going to be your child who goes through it. So I'm fine. But the moment it happens to them, then they're like, okay, we need to do something about this. Why is my child getting assaulted by the police? They're the good kids. And the fact is, the criminal system does not see anyone as a good kid or a bad kid. It sees everyone as a potential inmate. And I think that's how we as people, we should see it. Another thing too is we as community members should see the police as you work for us. A lot of times police make us scared to feel like, oh, it's our job to work around you all. You all fund the community, not the community funding you all, but it's the other way around. So we need to be able to go to our sheriff, to go to our police departments, to our county councils, city councils, and say, the police are not here to police us. They're here to help us. They're here to keep us safe. And me and McKayla may have different views on the police issue there, but I feel like this. I feel like it's on us to take over the police departments and make them into what we want them to be. I feel like we need to reduce. I would love to see police departments focus mainly on solving crimes as detectives, things like that. What we need more is community liaisons, going into communities, figuring out what is the root cause of why you're going through this and how we can stop. Because we can arrest people here, and there. Either they come out or the person next door is going through the same problem as them. So how are we going to stop city blocks from having issues rather than stopping one person one at a time? And then one more thing is that when you said why we don't call it a criminal justice system is because it's not justice for, there's no justice for the person who quote unquote committed the crime, but also there's no justice for the person who was the victim of the crime either. It's seen as, oh, your justice is that this person is locked up. Okay, well, who's helping them with their mental health issues that they're going through because of what happened? Who's helping them with all the other problems that come up?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difference between, the system we do now of retributive justice, I think they call it, because it's about just making sure the person who's quote unquote in the wrong gets punished. And then that, we say justice was served, is not about making sure that the person who was, harmed feels, good and,
It's like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very zero sum. And, as McKayla and others have pointed out, statistically, it's not really having that impact of, decreasing crime really in the first place. And so, another question that I have here is that, we've talked a lot about, what, sort of is negative about, the status quo and, why the tough on crime approach, is counterproductive. But I imagine you both would acknowledge that, like, to the extent that youth crime does exist, and crime in general does exist, like, that is a legitimate problem that should be addressed in some way, even if not through the tough on crime, way. And so my question is, like, if not through tough on crime, then like what should be done to address and decrease, crime, including among youth? For example, Arden talked about, de-escalation. I think sometimes it can be about, even when we know what should be done, it's a question of who should be doing it. Should it be, armed police in schools, or should it be, some other, professionals? And so, that's my question is, if not tough on crime approach, then what should be done to address, crime, and especially, youth crime?
Yeah, I think that what needs to be done is that people should be able to afford to live, providing housing for every single person because they need it, not because they can't afford it. Ensuring that people have health care and not just access to health care, to make sure that they can get the mental health resources that they need to address the root causes of their behavior. And then also making sure that we have no food deserts. Because even as an adult, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, you don't get to eat breakfast, even you're going to be cranky. You know what I'm saying? And also not holding kids to a higher standard to adults than adults with that regard. But I think the biggest thing that stops crime, because crime is just a symptom of a bigger root cause. And basically having things that are needed to sustain your life, to sustain your mental, are the biggest things that you can have, the most important thing that you can have to mitigate youth quote unquote crime. I'm gonna keep saying that. But I think that, if people, because when you think about people who go rob banks or steal out of stores, they're not doing it because they're bored and it's something fun for them to do. Like, they're doing it out of necessity. Even when when we talk about kids and when we talk about, you know, undesirable behavior, such as maybe getting into fights at school or bringing things to school that they necessarily shouldn't be bringing, and not asking those questions of why that's happening and actually getting to the root cause of that and seeing what resources are available for that kids, it's not going to stop there. You might incarcerate that one child. You may say, okay, we need to be tough on this crime, but not addressing those root causes is not going to stop the next kid from doing it, or the next kid from doing it, or the next kid from doing it. It's not even going to stop that kid from doing it. It's just going to remove them, school to prison pipeline, take them out of the school, put them into the prison industrial complex, and never address why they did what they did. And so I think that people just need things. You know, we need things. We are human. Everything happens for a reason. I am a firm believer that there are no bad people. And I know a lot of people may disagree with that. There are no bad people. Everything happens for a reason. Even if you look at some of the people who have created the most heinous of crimes, there is almost always trauma behind that has went untreated, that has went unresolved, that they probably didn't even see as trauma. Maybe they disassociated themselves, which also in turn turns into a mental health concern. And so we have to look at crime as just a small speck of just a symptom of something deeper and something bigger that's happening. And try to reimagine what safety means for us. Safety means having resources, because if you can afford housing, if you have a job that's paying you a livable wage, if your parents have a job that's paying them a livable wage to be able to take care of you, you know, if we're still in school, then that makes me feel safer. Because now maybe you won't want to check me for my pockets. Maybe you don't want to steal my lunch money, you know, because you have it. And so I think giving people the resources that they need is ultimately what keeps our community safe.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like even how you look at lower income communities, there are more crime amongst them than there are wealthier. The wealthier you get, the less crime that you're going to see in the area. And it's for two reasons. One, because they have the resources. So any of those crimes of poverty, stealing, robbing people, even if it's for, like, let's just say your pocketbook, your change, whatever you got, doing things like holding up a gas station, holding up a grocery store, stealing groceries. You're not going to see those in wealthier neighborhoods because for them, we don't need those resources. We have them already. So you're going to see in a higher level of crime and poverty within lower neighborhoods. But also what you're getting to is that people start to have mental health problems, because if I'm not eating like I should, if I don't have these support circles like I should, you start lashing out because in your mind, no one cares about you. And as a child, most children think, if no one cares about me, I'm going to do something to make you care about me, whether it's in a positive way or a negative way as well. So we need to, one, make sure that people have stable networks and that can easily be done on local levels by having more community organizations, by having more Boys and Girls Club, by having just more places kids can go to feel connection with other kids in a safe way as well. But then also looking at the economic side and making sure, like McKayla said, people have food to eat, people have money in their pockets, people don't feel like they have to go out and take from somebody else that may not have much, just so I can have the basic necessities of life as well.
Yeah, no, both great answers there. Definitely agree. We need a more sort of comprehensive, holistic approach, you know, more proactive rather than reactive, which is what we, you know, really have right now, what a lot of people are, you know, calling for. I imagine a lot of the reforms that people are going to be calling for is, yeah, more armed police in the schools. And just for context, we had that. I think as probably most counties in Maryland have that at this point, we have that, but there was a strong, you know, pushback against that from, you know, social justice communities here in Howard County, and our county executive sort of did a half measure compromise and took the SROs out of the high schools, but I believe they're still in the middle in elementary schools. And so I believe
in the high school.
Oh, did I have that backwards?
Well, they're in the high school, not in the
Took them out of
Okay. Okay, I see.
I think they kind of float the middle school,
Uh-huh.
like there's things,
They
I remember
had-
some, yeah, I think they kind of float, yeah, it's not like
Wh-
the same permanent.
Which is
float.
interesting because one of the stated justifications for SROs, to my understanding, is like to prevent school shootings, but school shootings, aren't they normally on like the elementary schools and
Yeah.
stuff? And
Yes.
so,
And then also if you have them rotating, so wouldn't you just wait? Okay, I know Tuesday he's not here, so
Yeah,
let's go ahead and
Yeah.
Yeah, and-
Tuesday.
but so all that to say is that SRO, we have SROs in some schools, but not all schools. I would predict that one of the reforms that this group will probably push, or community members will push this group to make, is to, put SROs back into the schools. I wouldn't be shocked if, we see something about metal detectors in schools, whether they'll actually, whether they'll actually officially make these recommendations. I'm sure it'll at least be discussed. And so, my question is, given this incident that took place, and again, it was just one single incident, now we're about to make, potentially completely sweeping systemic, changes based on one single incident. The school system has created a safety and security advisory work group to, quote, deeply explore the issue of school safety and make recommendations to the superintendent and the Board of Education. The superintendent charged the advisory group to consider every possibility and put any possible solution on the table in accelerated fashion. So given that mandate, what solutions or reforms would you two, propose to this work group to address, how would you try to reel this work group in what you view as the right direction? What reform should people like us, who agree with your vision, be pushing for? Just, any other just general advice for, how we should try to, and that's part of, this event tonight, is to try to reshift that discussion. But yeah, any advice on what reforms we should advocate for, or any other just general advice?
Yes, it's broken. I'm sorry
Yeah.
again, because I know those,
No.
you know, what's your name again? You're
Jake,
Jake?
yes.
Jake, about the committees real quick, just to say about Howard County, you say you're Charles County, but no.
Mhm.
Because I've been on different committees. I was on a school phone committee and LGBTQ committee, so I've been pretty active. And I wanted to get on that one, probably did because I'm always volunteering,
Yeah.
because I like to be vocal. But with that committee, the one thing I will say with Howard County, when it comes to those committees, which I do like, is the superintendents, and since I've been here, my son is in now 10th grade, that they've always involved the community. That's one, and it's usually a very diverse group of people. So basically, I feel like with the phone ban, some went in none, some of it in the middle, and the final was kind of compromised, and it all came down to it. So if they are, with your suggestions, also, so it'd be like the people like you were on there, and then you got the people over here, that I felt that they've done pretty good with that, even though everybody might not be happy.
Mhm.
But for me, just in general, if every, district would really involve that kind of piece, then I think like if Charles County did that, like they called on people like you that are in the community, even whether you have kids or not, in the community, and that's what I found. They had some people that didn't have kids, they had some teachers, administrators, but you had parents, so you had a lot of a good balance.
Yeah.
So for me, in general, I just wanted to say how Howard County has done it, that to me, I feel, not that I'm agree with the end result, but I feel knowing the past and being part of it, that to me, they did involve people
And-
versus him just saying, I'm gonna make a decision.
And
So
that's,
that's just my core kind of with, before you give your advice or how you think it should be, or good or bad. But to me, that's a big thing, is that community piece, and I find that a lot of people I talk to don't know, or their community is not involved, and the superintendent and just administrators make those decisions, and it makes it even worse from both sides of the table.
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm sorry.
and no, I appreciate that. That's good to know that you.
You touched on Howard County.
Yeah, no.
I know that one first.
Yeah, I'm glad
being
that
involved with
you've
it, yeah.
been a member of these sorts of.
So I'm glad to see it work, yeah.
Yeah, and so you've seen how it works firsthand, and yeah, that's sort of my question to them is, as you know personally, on these work groups, you have, it's diverse in pretty much every way, including ideologically, so that you might have one person or one group of people on this work group advocating for this direction, then other people advocate, and so what it's going to be is basically the loudest and most passionate voices are going to get what they want. Nobody's going to get everything of what they want. It's going to be some sort of compromise, but one side is probably going to get more of what they want than the other side. And so my question to them is, how do we make sure that our voices are the ones that hopefully get listened to more? Our voices and our reforms get listened to more than the tough on crime folks who are very loud.
Yeah, one of my biggest suggestion would be to stick to data. because a lot of the times people will speak out of emotion, especially the tough on crime folks. They oftentimes come with no data. And it's just pure emotion, which is understandable in some cases. But I would first start off by saying we need to get guidance counselors in school who are actually doing counseling and not just administrative work. And I'll give an example because my daughter, she wasn't here, but she's not anymore. So I'll tell her story. But she had a situation where she's dealing with a classroom bully who hit her. And so I was upset about it. I called the school, I spoke to the teacher and kind of asked, you know, like, what's going to happen with this? Their immediate response was, well, the other kid got written up. They got in trouble. And I was just like, well, okay, so that's not going to help my daughter feel safe in class. So like, what's going to happen to make sure that she feels safe in the environment that she's in? And then I suggested for them to have a peer mediation meeting with the counselor, which I'm assuming the counselor at my daughter's school doesn't counsel, because they told me that they tried to have a conversation with her and the other kid, and because they both couldn't agree on what happened, there was nothing that they can do. In specific words, they said there was nothing that they can do to ensure that it wouldn't happen again. Yeah. And so for me, I'm thinking, okay, and then again, they reiterated, but the other child was written up per policy, they got a referral. And I let them know, well, that's not going to keep my child safe, because that other kid might need support services also, because why is the other child acting that way? And it was a child who had other instances of bullying other kids in the classroom too. And I told them that kid seems like they need some kind of support. I don't want you just punishing that child and writing them up, because I don't want her to get mad and come back to class the next day and hit my kid again. So I would like for that other child to get support. Again, tackling root causes. So I think that we need schools to actually have guidance counselors. A lot of schools who do have guidance counselors maybe have like one counselor per grade, if even that. But I think that we need to focus on that. I think that like I said, sticking to data. I know people probably want more police in school, the metal detectors, all that. And all I have to say about that is they want schools to look like prisons so bad. You cannot continue to treat these kids as if they're institutionalized and then not act and not expect them to react in that way. And so for one, we need to start making schools actually feel like a safe place of learning and a place where they can be with their friends. They spend most of their time at school. And we also need to talk about the infrastructure of our schools and how schools don't have windows and how they look like jails. And although people say, you know, well, they also like to bring up the school shooting. First, we need to talk about how often that actually happens. Second, we need to talk about yes, and second, we need to talk about the root causes that often lead up to that when it's dealing with another student. How I remember being in school and I remember kids picking on me, and we call it joning, but or you know, picking on me, making fun of me. And sometimes the teachers will be right there and no one will do anything. They just let it carry on. They let it happen, and it happens every single day until that kid gets to their breaking point. And so we also need to educate our teachers on how to be more proactive in bullying, and not just bullying, but other behaviors that they may be seeing. Again, tackling the root causes. And also because they will inevitably bring up school shootings, I would also talk about the infrastructure with that. And when we look at school shootings, they almost always use an assault rifle. Police officers are not walking around in schools with AR-15s on their shoulders. Their one bullet is not going to do anything for that gun that school shooter is going to have, first of all. So we need to talk about that. But yeah, my advice is to stick to the data. My advice is to just think about, again, focusing on the root causes and advocating for safe spaces within these schools so that kids can have people to talk to without fear of being reprimanded, and advocating for actual counselors in the school that can do the work towards harm reduction and restorative practices within the schools.
Yeah, I would add on that. One is getting students involved. A lot of times you see these work groups get popped up. It's a lot of parents, a lot of people who have free time, but they don't actually ask the students who are in the schools, hey, what do you think could be done to make it safer? Because a lot of times their first reaction isn't going to be, oh, we'll have more police. It's going to say, hey, we need more resources towards mental health. We need more actually just free time to just hang out and have more just of a community environment. But also I think they need to look outside of the school system as well. as well. What's happening in people's home lives? Does an environment have a really community environment, or is it based how we see more cities now are set up, where you go home, there's nothing out there in the community for you. So people don't have this connection to, oh, my neighbor, my community member, as we're all one whole community. Everyone looks at themselves as kind of like separate people who are like, I don't care if what I do harms you, harms my neighbor, harms the next person. They're just thinking about themselves only. And when you have a system set up like that, it's easier to kind of create more crime, because you're not thinking about things past yourself. You're just thinking about yourself and your family. So we need to make sure that that they don't just stop at what happens at the school board, or at the school system, but they go past that as well. So what's actually happening in people's community environments. And there's also some different legislation I can also talk about too, that like is going to pop up at the General Assembly as well, in good bills and bad bills too. So yeah.
Comment and question. First of all, the superintendent proposed next year's budget, there's increasing that and transportation costs, which is another big can of worms. People in Howard County knows more about it. It's unrelated to this, but the security, we don't know what the details are, but given this committee's work, and I think the question was really timely to ask about that. So the comment about what you said about data, I do worry. I love data. I'm a scientist actually. So I feel like not everyone's trained to actually distinguish what real data is. If you look at all the misinformation, and then that's one point. The other point is, so how to push back when people give you, oh, I have data, I researched. There was a meme of the mom sitting on the toilet looking at a phone. That's the anti-vaccine people's research versus people in the labs and actually scientists doing research. So there's a reality of that, how to effectively push back on that without making them feel like we're just picking on, you don't know what data is. Because it takes real skills to distinguish. There's so much misinformation. There's a whole industry doing that. The other thing is, I really do feel that when it comes to safety, because what we talked about all of this root cause of how the society, all of us are hurting. Even the people living in the wealthy community are safe from all these criminals. No, that's not how the society functions. But emotion takes so much more precedence when it comes to kids' safety. My kids graduated from the school system, but I remember the days when thinking, might be the last time I see them and sending them to school. So I understand not condoning that kind of, because I really do think the security's theater.
Yeah.
The SRO is not going to save anything. So how do we address people's that kind of a raw emotion, parents' raw emotion and reactionary decision-making process when something like whatever happened in Howard County or other places, while pushing towards actually a more effective and just direction? Because once something happens, we do have, it's not happening every day, but it happens often enough. Every time that happens, especially in locally, Howard County's SROs added to the middle school, that happened right after St. Mary's County had a school shooting.
Yeah.
Our previous superintendent came from there. So it was almost personal to him. So it was a really reactionary step that he took, added those middle school SROs. Once that happens, it's much harder to reverse. And the cultural shift was pushed towards more tougher crimes. So I guess those are two questions. This is really hard to answer, but I would love to hear your perspective on that. It's important for us to have some tools to deal with the community being able to think of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a really great job with that question and those comments. One thing I'll add, I have, some coworkers, acquaintances who are more conservative leaning when it comes to policing firearm ownership, and many of them are also parents. And from their perspective, they really, when they're saying, hey, we should have more police in schools, they're really looking at it as, this is the only way I know how to keep my kids safe in this country that we live in. I was speaking to one former police officer talking about, hey, if I get sent to a school to be a SRO and they tell me that, hey, you can't have a firearm in the school, then he said in that scenario, I would just walk out, like be like, hey, let's look here. So it's like a very entrenched position that people are in. And again, it is very emotionally driven. And we do live in a country where school shootings happen all the time, and crime is on the rise. We can talk about why, whether or not it actually is crime. But that's just a reality that we live in. And I think the only thing I want to say is it can be easy for us to be like, you're wrong. And it's like have a moral high ground like over the other person. But I really feel like we need to spend more time actually talking to the other side, like from an empathetic position. I just feel like we're becoming more and more divided, even though all of our kids, conservative, progressive, going like schools, this impacts all of our kids. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that, I think that when those instances happen, I think it's important to acknowledge the way that the other person feels, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want our kids to be safe, and we want to see them after we send them to school. We want to see them again. And so I would just, for one, acknowledge that their feelings are valid, and the reason why they feel the way that they feel is valid. But I would also, and for my advice would be, is to, as far as like coming to the middle ground, is to talk about like what you were talking about with data and how some people, may not necessarily say, oh, well, they might want to act off emotion, or if they think they have data, just like you think you have data, and it's like, no, that's not really data. This is data. But it's like, maybe come to the common ground and say, okay, what has worked? Because there are examples in other school districts, and I know in our community organizing, like when we're talking to legislators, we often use examples of what works in other counties that are similar to the county that the issue is happening in. So maybe talking about, not necessarily like thinking off of emotion, because while yes, all of our feelings are valid, the reason why we feel the way that we feel is valid, but let's actually talk about what will work and what has been proven to work. Because at the end of the day, our kids' safety is what matters the most. And if we act off of emotion and just, oh, no, let's just throw all the police officers in the school that we can, and then something happens like in the Uvalde shooting where the school resource officer ran, and so when we have to, that's the point where we have to take a look at what we know works. Just based off of what other school districts are doing that don't have SROs, and other school districts that don't have armed police officers. And I heard you say that they were going to be talking about increasing funding for security. My other alternative to SROs is violence disruptors, because kids fight, stuff happens in school, but having someone that can disrupt violence versus someone that's there to incarcerate the children. And then also we have to remember, and other people who may be conservative might not agree with this, we have to remember we're asking the same police officers who shoot unarmed people of color in this country to be in the schools with our children of color with those same guns. And so that's also a valid concern as well. But yeah, I would, along with sticking with the data, I would just, like I said, just try to pinpoint other areas in the country that have similar demographics, that are similar to Howard County, and say, this is what works here and this is what could work here, but also tie it to the data, if that makes sense. Kind of like, an example, because people always want to see something tangible. Like, how do you know this works? Well, because it worked here,
Yeah, I would even say approaching them from the concept of, okay, cool. Let's say you want to just arrest kids when something happens. That's not stopping something from happening. You're just addressing it after it happens. So we need to look at policies that actually stop someone from wanting to make those decisions that lead to whether it is shooting or theft, assault, things like that. Because it's real easy to have that emotional impact to say, hey, we need to do something now. But a lot of times those aren't the kind of stopping it solutions. Those are like, hey, it just happened, so we need to react in this moment, rather than, like you said, having those preventative measures. So it's not just this one thing won't happen. It won't happen to my child in the future. It won't happen to anyone in the future, because we created a situation where that just doesn't happen anymore as well. And also piggyback off of what you said, going and looking at other areas that do not have police within schools, or have more resources, seeing, hey, what works in their communities, why can we mirror those in our communities? And when it comes to money with safety is important, but let's also look at having community events, even when it gets the kids not having the funds to be able to participate in school sports or participate in clubs because they don't have transportation to get home, or you don't have the money to go on field trips. Sometimes those even create mental health problems or other issues that cause kids to say, you know what, let me act out because I don't have anything, and I'm mad at you that you do have something that I don't have as well.
And also, and I would say, and also one thing I would continue to reiterate when you're having these conversations is continuously using the term harm reduction, because at the end of the day, that's what all these policies need to be centered around, is reducing the harm. Because like I said, we all care about our children. We want to see them when they come home. We want them to be in high spirits when they come home, so ultimately, we, like how Carlos said, harm reduction is having proactive policies and not reactive policies, because by the time you react, the harm is done, your kid is traumatized, you know what I'm saying? And now that's a whole nother thing that you have to deal with. So harm reduction, harm reduction, harm reduction.
Yeah, one more thing I want to add. I mentioned this to, I think, Jake. If you guys have been at Arundel Mills Mall recently, you'll see that now after a certain hour, children are just not allowed there. There's a police cruiser parked right in front of the mall.
It's like in Charles County too.
And I actually spoke to one of the security guards there, and the reason why that's happening is apparently kids there are being more violent. Apparently some kids brought like weapons to the mall. So like, from the perspective of an average everyday mall goer, I don't wanna hang up the statistic just because I went to the mall. But like, kids are losing more and more of their spaces. So you got school, you got home, and what else? And what if you have like a bad home environment? And like on top of that, you're getting bullied in school. Like, I am gonna disagree with you a little. I think there are evil people out there, but I don't think we should be policing people nearly as much. But yeah, that's kind of something I want to bring up.
What I want to say was, with Howard County, real quick, with the committees, when you said about involving children, I know for the phone ban, they did have them, so I'm hoping that every committee, and when I was on the LGBTQ and the bullying, they had students, so I'm hoping that they do it for the safety one that you're talking about. If they've done it for other ones, I would hope, assume that they are. We have middle schoolers and high schoolers, so that was a good thing. So that's a good thing to me. I think it really helped, and they really listened, and they gave a lot of us adults insight when they were mentioning when we're on Zooms and doing agreement, we're on Zooms and stuff like that. So that was one thing I know they were. So I'm hoping that every committee, they do that to continue that. And I think every school should do that if they're doing things like that. And then I was thinking about kinds of conversations with statistics, and then when you talk about different conservative people. There's a particular group on Facebook, I call it Howard County Divided, not Howard County United, which a lot of us that are in Howard County may or may not be on it, but I get called all kinds of names.
Neighbors United.
And I get told the left is this and all that, they, it's kind of wild. But it's both sides on there, so I speak, people speak, we go back and forth, some agree, some don't, sometimes people agree, they disagree. But when you talked about you mentioned conservatives, to me, you can't address a lot of these issues without addressing the racial bias. And when you brought up about, some of the officers and the racial bias and shooting unarmed black men, this and the others. And a lot of the people I find in some of these groups are people I've had conversations with when it comes to the conservative side, more policing, but they don't want to address the statistics. So it kind of all ties in of what is really there as if it does not exist. But what I also find is when I'm looking at a lot of, say, comments on Facebook, not just this group, that I feel like a lot of their kids, I would love to see their kids in school. And I feel like a lot of it is the parents who are pushing and pushing and pushing. Some kids may have been, you're taught in the home to be, racist or whatever you are, or biased or whatever, judgmental. But I'm especially being here in Howard County, what I've seen about the diversity and the way the kids operate, I'm like, I bet you half of their kids go to school, act one way and act another, and the parent don't have a clue, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ side of how they react. I'm like, some of y'all got closeted LGBT kids right now sitting in your house that are scared to talk to you. I've said that on social media, like, because y'all are so extreme that it's crazy. And I'm not talking about elementary, when they go back and forth about drag and all that, but not to get totally off. But when you say about conservatives, there's a lot of issues that I find that it's like, some of it, I don't even think the kids even aren't even like that. I feel like the kids are a lot more, with so much access to social media, and like, they can't be, just, you tell me, black people do this, that, even if they've never seen a black person in their life, so to speak. Social media gives you that good side, the bad side, whatever you wanna call the bad side of somebody, to realize, you know, that's why you got so many people on social media, which hoping some of these kids probably follow some of the ones that say I was racist, and they're barely speaking out on not being racist now. They learned from whatever they learned and what they were taught, but a lot of them come from small towns that were isolated, and it took them being incarcerated, and they said they met black people or other people of color that helped them, and they realized, oh, they're not as bad, and they kind of separate from it. But a lot of the kids here, and I'll say in Howard County, I got friends that live in Charles County, and I know, give me a retired military, there's a lot of military, so I know there's a lot of, might be predominantly black, but you taught me something about Waldorf in that area. I didn't know statistically how, I've seen it build up, I was here in the 90s and now, but how do you be this biased or racist in this day and age and living in some of these communities? You know, it just, that's why I said, I really don't think all the kids are, and that's the part that hurts my heart of some of these people that are just bashing.
And that's why another
ties in everything, the stats and everything, and it's, you know, it's just baffled me sometimes with some of the parents.
And that's why another, I'll just say, and that's why another part of school safety is incorporating, what do I want to call it? Like like diversity, equity, inclusion into social emotional learning.
That's what I'm saying.
It needs, it needs to be included in social emotional learning as well, and through all grade levels, and it needs to be mandatory.
Back from, like, that's what I said, I go to HoCo, like the conservative side.
Yeah.
And that's the part where it's like, why would you want to learn, you know, but, oh no, you could have all kinds of conference breakouts, this could break down. You have more meetings than having. More discussions.
You're right. And I think one thing that needs to be done too is a really like showing of, a really showing of how many white kids go through these same problems as well, because the media will have you believe it's only black people commit crimes, only black people get harassed by the police. White people are getting this too, and the thing is that they may not feel like there's a space for them to speak out. In my mind, white people come along with black, brown people, and everyone else, because we're all going to come together and say we're dealing with these issues from the police as well. So that way, it's not stereotyped into, oh, it's just black people who are against it, so we can look it off. It's like, well, no, they're white people, they're Latin people, Asian people, there's Middle Eastern people, everyone.
Like James Baldwin said, it's happening to white people and black people. It's happening to you more. We're just dying faster. Yes.
As you both mentioned, you know, it is, you know, crime is definitely, you know, one of the main leading causes is, you know, poverty, and, you know, being in an impoverished and desperate situation, and poverty, you know, disproportionately affects, you know, black and non-white people because of, you know, our, you know, racist past and present, but, you know, there's still a lot of poor white people who are still, you know, committing, you know, getting into the same, you know, systemic, you know, issues, and so yeah, this does affect everybody, even if it does disproportionately impact you know, young black and brown students especially, and so, you know, thank you for all those points. And Arden, you're absolutely right that, you know, students are the biggest stakeholders in this, and so getting their voices involved. I hadn't even really thought of that, but, you know, I wish Iman, newest member of our steering committee, was on. He mentioned that to me when I was talking to him about tonight's meeting a few days ago. And, you know, on that point, one thing that does worry me is, like, I know when I was a kid, and there's probably a lot of other kids who are a lot smarter and you know, better than I was, but when I was a kid, I didn't really think for myself that much, and I really just kind of blindly parroted like what my parents told me, because I just didn't have the critical thinking skills at that point. And so, like, my fear is that, like, the tough on crime parents, they are going to get their kids to probably like testify. And so, like, you're saying, like, oh, hopefully the committees, you know, do a good job doing on, well, I don't think we can rely on the committee. We got to rely on that's our job as community organizers and advocates to, get, people that we know who agree with us to, sign up to testify when the time comes, encourage their, kids, if they're students, to also testify. And then, the last point, I want to make related to statistics, and then maybe we have time for one audience question, although we have to be out of the library at 9.
okay.
They're very, very hard stop at 9.
Okay.
And yes, but McKayla brings up, stick to the statistics. This is from the Schools Not Jails website. They have these professional organizations like the American, Psychologists Association, stuff like that. And those professional groups have put out like, this is the recommended ratio for, counselors for every X amount of students, you should have one counselor, sort of thing. This is from Schools Not Jails website. I've seen this stat other places too. Those associations recommend, federally recognized 250 to 1 student counselor ratios, 700 to 1 student to psychologist ratio, and 750 to 1 student to nurse ratio. There's a group in the county, the Howard County Police Accountability Task Force. It's a citizen-led, criminal justice reform group. And Ted Stewart, their leader, he had actually RSVP'd to come tonight. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. But we a few years ago, when that was getting formed, we were trying to push for SROs to get out of schools. We looked up, we found these ratios, and I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but as McKayla said, a lot of times it's just like one counselor per grade, if that. And so all that to say that, Howard County is woefully short of these recommended ratios, whereas we have a lot of, police in schools. And so, that this is a statistic that can definitely be referenced. And, the rebuttal is always, oh, the money, it costs money. But, again, 6th wealthiest county in the country, if there's any counties that can't afford this, I would hope that it's a county like Howard County. We just have to make it a priority. And so just because we are so tight on time, I don't know if we should risk another, sorry, especially
Don't risk it.
Yeah, I think we're not gonna risk it. I know you all have a long drive home, and I didn't realize your daughter's here, so I'm sorry. McKayla.
She's fine. She comes to me with all my events.
So
So.
the US, it's 5% of the population, we account for like 25% of the world's prison population.
Yes.
I thought we'd be higher.
We're first in the
Right,
in the world
right.
here.
No, because you're right. And even looking at those statistics, what both you all were saying, you look at the money aspect of it, it costs a lot to incarcerate children.
Mhm.
It costs a lot. It is cheaper to, right. And it's a whole lot cheaper on the county to take these restorative programs and put those in place, rather than saying we're going to lead with the incarceration of children as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you?
No.
Yes.
Oh, you're done?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry.
Can I mention like one little thing?
Yes.
All right, go on. Sorry about
The
that. So,
legislation.
yeah. So there are like 2 current bills that are coming up around this topic. One is by Delegate Acevero, HB 165. What this bill does is it would establish that for the interrogation of minors, that it would be that a statement made by a minor where a police officer was actually lying to them to get testimony from them, that actually would not be admissible as well. And then there's another bill by everyone's favorite family member of the Mangionis, who's putting in a bill that would make children suspected of a crime of violence and prohibit them from going to a school in person.
What's that bill number?
That is HB 68.
Is that represented?
I'm
I
not
think
sure
he's
where the
Baltimore County,
Mangionis,
so-
Baltimore
Baltimore
County.
County.
Yeah, he is Baltimore County. Yep, he's the uncle of them.
Said they wouldn't be able to go to public school.
In person at
So they
all.
could go to soccer or something like, so basically.
Oh, no, nothing. Yeah, virtual school.
Virtual is the only option, or alternative type of placement.
Yeah, well, the way that it's worded is like, no in person.
So no one
Sure.
person, yeah.
Well, for those of you on virtually, I'm sorry, we had a quite lively discussion from the in-person attendance with a lot of questions. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to do audience questions from the Zoom attendance, but thank you all for being here. we will send the recording out in the next few days or next week. Thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed the discussion, and we will see you next month. We're gonna end the Zoom call. And have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll close it out. Thank you. Thank you for handling all this. So, beginning.